All right. Happy Wednesday. I hope you guys are off to a good start for the week. Well, I guess it's midweek now, so hopefully it's going good. Um, not a crazy day today in crypto, but some big news this morning. If you guys are paying attention, we got a few different things. So we got the FDIC coming out saying that they're going to approve banks to custody crypto. They're going to insure crypto deposits. They're going to give guidance when it comes to the banks working with digital assets, which is awesome. That's not been a thing. Caitlin Long has had a long, hard fought battle with the FDIC and approving insurance for crypto deposits and everything on her side of the fence. Um, just excited to see that there's going to be some actual regulation and actual fostering of the ability for banks and institutions to step in here and work with people in that capacity. We've been pushing the envelope at Digital Wealth Partners, providing institutional custody for our clients for a little while, have been for more than a year, doing that for individuals. First, we were at Standard Custody, provided insurance and institutional custody there. And then we moved over to Anchorage here about 6 months ago for our clients' capital. And we currently have about 375 clients that are onboarding or have been onboarded and funded accounts there, have insurance on their digital assets for the first time ever. So again, super cool to see that from the FDIC. We also had a big announcement this morning come out from the DTCC, if you guys were paying attention over there. And this is huge. I don't know how to impress upon you how big this is for digital assets. They have a full toolkit for people to be able to tokenize stocks, bonds, and other financial products that are held in institutional custody by Goldman, Citi, Fidelity. All of the brokers and clearinghouses will now have the capability to be able to tokenize the securities that they transact on a regular basis. We've speculated and know that Project Ion's been running in the background since 2022, which was developed by the DTCC and R3. And that uses a private permission blockchain called Corda to be able to host, that infrastructure where trusted parties can transact. And that's what they are. If you're a clearinghouse or a broker, there's a lot of scrutiny that goes into your ability to participate in that ecosystem. You are a trusted party, and obviously you're going to have to be a good actor in order to be able to participate there. So it makes sense that would be a private permissioned ecosystem and blockchain that they would use to host that environment, and then they might push, public markets or the brokers might host their stuff on a public blockchain, maybe the XRPL. So anyway, huge deal this morning with the DTCC coming out with that announcement. And then we also had the stablecoin bill that's been proposed and put out for a vote there in Congress. It's on the floor. I think it's of the House, and then it'll move to the Senate. So should be bipartisan approval on that bill as it makes its way through. Super excited to see that here early in 2025. I don't know how to impress upon you how big all of these things are for the adoption of these networks and digital assets at scale, and the liquidity that's going to move on chain when they start tokenizing these financial products, and just the products themselves. Like, that's really cool, that those will be on chain, but the value of the assets that will be moving and the trades and the settlement of the trading of those financial products, that's going to be the fun part for people here in 2025. If you've invested in the right digital assets and you're positioned in the right spot, you're going to experience a liquidity event that other people dream about, people that win the lottery dream about. If you've done a really good job of dollar cost averaging over the past 3, 4, 5 years here, specific digital assets like XRP, HBAR, XLM, XDC. I have to say this: nothing here is financial advice. It's only for entertainment and educational purposes only. Always consult with your financial advisor before making any investment decisions. I'm just some guy on the internet, but if you want to talk to, an actual financial advisor, you can always reach out to digitalfamilyoffice.io or digitalwealthpartners.net, and the guys there can make sure that you're doing it the right way, give you financial advice, because they're licensed to do so. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and hop into the Q&A here. We do run it down every Monday and Wednesday night, which I love doing. I get a lot of fulfillment and do enjoy the great questions that people ask. We've got Crypto Sponge with a super chat off the jump here. Thank you so much, brother. He says, never catch these lives because of work, but just wanted to say thank you for your entire staff for the knowledge and guidance. Can you please touch on the sovereign fund and how that may relate to crypto going forward? Yeah, so the U.S. Sovereign fund taking allocation to digital assets would be huge. You've also got sovereign wealth funds of other countries in the Middle East that are looking to get some pretty significant exposure to digital assets. They manage a lot of money, like a lot of money. These sovereign wealth funds do, and so if they decide that they are going to dip their toe in the water, that could be $1 trillion globally. They could move into the asset class. It could increase it by 25% for the total market cap. That's a big deal, dipping their toe, right? Moving $1 trillion in. So you could have some pretty significant impacts on total amount of supply left on the market for other people to purchase on the retail side. You could see a liquidity crisis just from them moving into the market. You've also got a strategic reserve. Trump had that little conference that was put out yesterday by the staff there on the crypto side. They're talking about putting together a strategic Bitcoin reserve here in the U.S. and potentially other digital assets. They've got 180 days there in the working group to design, what they think is going to be the best reserve for digital assets here in the U.S. I think there's a possibility. We talked about this in the mastermind today, or maybe it wasn't today, maybe it was Monday. We went over, the possibility for the U.S. government to take Ripple's escrow, which I think is a real possibility. If they did want, to maintain control over the financial system and XRP becomes systemically important or designated a tier 1 asset by the BIS, that's a really low-hanging fruit for the U.S. government to, put in their pocket. And it would also, if it goes to the prices that I think it will, with the supply and demand shock and the necessity to be able to settle the back end of the stock market in a liquidity crisis, or when the reverse carry trade unwinds and causes unrealized losses for the investment banks, I'm thinking they could easily push the XRP to 4 digits. And let's just say they did. Okay, we're going to run a fun exercise here. The U.S. is currently $36 trillion in debt. And if you wanted to offset that debt very quickly, you might take the $48 billion or billion XRP escrow from Ripple, and you might push that puppy to $1,000 a piece, and voila, you've got $48 trillion worth of value there now on the U.S. government's balance sheet, which would, offset the debt. We'd actually be in a little bit of a surplus there. We could pay people. Yeah, I think it's, that sounds wild, but solves a problem. And we've got creative people in place to create, value and solutions here in the U.S. You got Doge coming in, the Department of Government Efficiency that's moving in and going to help things there with Elon. I think it's a real thing. I think that could possibly happen. And, those that, again, were positioned well might get to take place in that. So that's what I got there, Crypto Sponge. Thank you. Like you said, you don't get to listen very often. I do appreciate the kind words and the support. And hopefully that was valuable, the answer I provided there. We've got CS2424. They say, hey, Jake, what do you think? What do you make of the XRP downtime? Do you think whales are manipulating the market to get retail out? They're not worried about retail, brother. Retail might have 4 or 5% of the supply. So, they could do without anything that we have. 95% of the XRP is held by Ripple and institutions and other large players in the market, enterprises. They're not worried about our small cut. They don't care about retail. And it didn't go down. It's not downtime. So Solana actually goes down. Okay, it's not able to transact. The XRPL has paused a few times in its history. One of those the other day, and that just means the network is trying to process more transactions than it can in a certain period of time. I think as they get payment channels set up and potentially something else that acts as a subnet that's inherent or exterior to the XRPL that can process transactions at scale. I think that those instances will no longer happen or exist. It's just when we see the network, the stress on the network above its threshold is when it'll pause and make sure that those transactions get backfilled and they're able to kick on again. So that's my understanding of what happened. I could be wrong on that. I think David Schwartz and We'd Say put out some words on it. You might refer to them as well, but I definitely don't think it's anything to do with. They do not care about retail. Retail. The only reason retail's in is there had to be some liquidity in this asset to trial it for the use cases that they wanted to, and the people here that are still in it when it moves are going to get lucky. We got HKD Todd. Hey, brother, how are you? Hope you're doing well. He says, good evening. I appreciate all the value you're bringing into the Beyond Broke Mastermind. Appreciate you for being there, brother. My question is, what in your opinion is holding up the reverse carry trade from melting down? All the pieces seem to be there for it to happen. I think it's already started, and they're just covering it up with other narratives along with, they had DeepSeek when you saw NVIDIA start to tumble. We had a big pullback this weekend in the crypto space that they blamed on, the tariffs, and then the same thing Monday and Tuesday this week in the stock market. I didn't see where we finished today. I'll have to take a look. Looked like we were trending sideways when I looked at the market earlier today. So where did we end up on the day here? About sideways. Really not a whole lot of action. Up 23. Over the last couple days here, it's kind of been drifting up and to the right after the fall on Monday. I think the market's topped. I'm going to go ahead and say that. I would love to be wrong. I know people are, stuck in the market in their 401ks and other structured products and things. When it moves to the downside, it's going to be extremely fast. And I do think it'll V-bottom out of there. And I do think that we're moving into another large expansion over the next 4 years and actually the next couple decades as a lot of these technologies take hold and provide significant efficiencies across the economy, brings back GDP here to the U.S. with the tariffs. I think the U.S. markets are going, poised for significantly higher, to go significantly higher over the next couple decades. But I do think in the short term, really here in Q1 in 2025, we're going to see a meltdown, like you mentioned, from the reverse carry trade unwinding, and then it'll bounce back quickly and head higher. So it's just my personal opinion. Again, take it with a grain of salt. I listen to people that I think are a lot smarter than me, and that's what they're saying. So that's my guess as well. Thank you for the super chat, by the way, and hope you and your family are doing well. We got Wild Bill. He says, how are you talking about exactly what I mentioned at the beginning of this? So this is the DTCC's Composer X. They cited assets being issued on ETH. Has the DTCC abandoned R3's Corda? How do you think XRPL plays into the role with DTCC? So I don't believe, I know for a fact that they haven't abandoned the Corda. So you need something with smart contract capability to be able to provide the ability to transact at scale for the DTCC. EVM sidechain on the XRPL could provide that capability. You can't settle stocks with ETH. Like there's too much cost associated with that. That makes zero sense. The latency, Also, to settle real time, wrong. The volume that you'd have to put on Ethereum's network would congest it. It's not going to work out. But you would if you needed to make something EVM compatible. Corda is in JavaScript. So I think that is what they're going to use at the end of the day. I don't know if they're going to come out and tell you that. If you look up Project Ion, it was finalized in 2022. And from my understanding, still running in tandem with the back end of the stock market. So we'll see, what actually shakes out or what it is. But for them to put out any type of toolkit is exciting. And I do think we are going to see tokenization of stocks here in 2025. Thank you for the super chat, Wild Bill. Couple people becoming a member. Honest Aim, thank you for the super chat, brother. He says, thanks you for all that you do in the Beyond Broke Mastermind. Stablecoin bill is on board. Ripple court case almost done. Reverse carry trade is unraveling. Wow, looks like we are set. Your thoughts, blessings to you and your wife, brother. Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think everything's poised for the domino theory to play out, which we put together about a year ago. March of 2024 is when I put out a formal video on the domino theory. 707 says XRP struggling. It's $2 and almost 50 cents, brother. Struggling is what it was doing for 4 years when it was hovering between 30 and 50 cents when everybody was dollar cost averaging. Above $2 is not struggling. Yeah, just get in while you can. Again, not financial advice, up to you. But yeah, I'm with you. This is a lot of stuff that we've been talking about in the mastermind for a long time. And it's hard on timing, right? People get excited about things, but it takes time for things to play out. And unfortunately, this is drug out for 4.5 years here while I've been hanging out for it. I thought things would play out in 2020. And I'm confident that things were actually ready back then for a lot of this, especially for international settlements and remittance. I think Ripple was poised to take that market from Swift or work with Swift back in 2020. And because, some things didn't work out as far as elections go, that was put on pause and Gary was moved in by the SEC. And, we got what we did for 4 years, and things were just held over until they could move forward again. So excited that we're finally at that point, and excited for everybody there in the mastermind. We have almost 1,400 members there in the group. Super cool culture. Blessed to be around all the people there. Run private deals in that community. We do a lot of cool stuff, and we'll continue to do cool stuff. We do in real life events. Where you get to meet other people that you have a commonality with, that feel like family. So many people are ostracized because they're in this asset class, and if you talk to your friends or family about it, they make you feel weird. But if you're there in that group, it feels like home. Everybody understands and has a very similar vision to yourself and aligned values. Like I said, the culture that's been built there is just unreal. And it'll continue to be that way. And we are going to lock it down on the other side of price appreciation here. When XRP does go beyond $10, we're going to lock it down for 30 days, and we're going to build in a pretty robust security system to make sure that we're vetting people that are coming into that community to a very high level. And we're going to make the cost to participate in the community 10x what it is today. So if you do want to get in, if you do want to lock in the current prices and be part of something really special, you can do that. You just go to, here's the website up here, beyondbroke.com. You can go check it out. You can try it out for a month for free if you want to. The code at checkout, if you want to do that, is just Beyond Broke, just like it's spelled there, all capitalized, the number 1, and then MO, like Mary Oscar or month. That gets you a free month there in the group. And you go check it out. Either Carbon One. Carbon One allows you to participate in the private deals that we run there in the community. We have a couple of those open right now for some fintech companies that I'm sure a lot of people might be interested in. It would save you a pretty substantial amount over anybody else in the space that provides that. And you don't have to be accredited to participate in these deals. because we qualify you as a sophisticated investor. We provide financial education and business resources there in the group that we feel are adequate so that you understand the risks and the upside associated with any of the investments that we discuss and allow people to participate in. And we can involve up to 35 non-accredited investors there on those deals, on the cap table for those deals there in the group through 506B Reg D funds. And we would love to, tell you more about that. The reason that I can't talk about it publicly is it's a 506B. 506B can only be to people you have a pre-existing business relationship with and qualify as a sophisticated investor. And so that's why we can talk about it there in the group, but I can't pitch it publicly on YouTube or TikTok or X. So if you want to learn more about the fintech companies that we're investing in there in the group, we'd love to have you there in the group to talk about it. Johnny Lakers, how are you, sir? Hope you're doing well. He says, Jake, I think the price of XRP is more of a distraction than it's ever been. All these upcoming laws and regulations and price dripping down, we will be rewarded for our patience. Thanks for all that you do. Thank you, brother. Appreciate you for your kind words and your support and there in the community and working with us at Digital Wealth Partners. And I'm with you. I think price is a distraction. It's been a distraction the whole time. The value is in the protocol. I'm not sure. There was a very intelligent gentleman that I can think of. I can see him saying those words. But that's really where it is. And that's what people will see over the long term when they start using this protocol at scale, just like the internet protocol or the email protocol. It's hard to put a value or a market cap on a protocol. And that's what we've talked about time and time again here on these lives when people bring that subject up. It's just a different dynamic and paradigm than people are used to, rather than a stock or something else that would make sense in that circumstance. So I'm with you. I think that in the very near future, people will be very much rewarded for their patience in holding some of these digital assets. And I'm excited to continue to build innovative products around that and bring value to the community. We got Joga Bonito, 8138. Thank you for the super chat. They say, hey, Jake, how does DWP have or is able to recommend a solid crypto accountant out in Florida? Also, any crypto accountant software recommendations over others? I like Coinly or CoinLedger if you're just looking to figure out your cost basis and your trades and what your tax implications are. You can just run that down. You attach it to all the exchanges and the wallets that you have, and then it should just spit out what you owe and your cost basis at the end of them. Either one of those are solid, and you should be able to give that to pretty much any accountant, and they can figure it out. However, we do have CPAs and accountants that do specialize in digital assets. We got a list of about 6 of them that we're happy to share with you. If you just want to email us at info@digitalfamilyoffice.io, our team there will be happy to share our list of accountants and CPAs with you. I don't know that we have any out there in Florida. I'd have to think about it. I don't know if you just really want to see that person in person. A lot of people we deal with, just over the Zoom call and the chat. But I think we do have one there in Florida. So happy to make those recommendations. If you have any questions, happy to answer them as well. Dennis, he says, wow, he's $100. Dennis, thank you. Unbelievable, man. Will XDC going to be regarded as American with DC office opening, and how much will DTCC use XDC? So R3 there's 2 considerations for what they're going to settle in. 1, does it have regulatory clarity? 2, is it tax efficient, and is there enough liquidity to be able to provide settlement for whatever transactions are trying to be settled? I'm pretty confident that there's only going to be one of those tokens, XRP and XDC, that has legal clarity here in the US. XDC, I don't think is going to fall under the qualification as a bridge currency. it runs under a different consensus mechanism. It uses delegated proof of stake, and people are rewarded for verifying the transactions on that network. We're actually looking at creating some solutions that would allow people to earn on their XDC for that. They are going to be opening a DC office here. I've met Atul and Ritesh. I hope that that's the case, and I hope that it does end up being a tax-free or American crypto at the end of the day. However, they've been there in Dubai. I actually went and spoke at their offices about a year ago today, almost a year ago today. I was in their offices in Dubai and put on a conference there for the USA UAE Alliance. So I know them. I actually made an introduction for them to Anchorage here just earlier this evening. So trying to get XDC on board to be able to provide custody and income solutions for our clients there at Anchorage. Bullish on XDC. However, I don't know that it's going to be used in the application that you mentioned here with the DTCC on the back end. I could be wrong. I'd love to be wrong. I'd love to see it do better than I think it's going to do. A lot of people I know would make a lot of money if that's the case, but I'm highly confident it's just going to be XRP for the application that you mentioned here. And again, I am hopeful that they do consider it an American-made crypto over the long term, and it does get the same tax benefits that a lot of those will. And again, thank you for the super chat, brother. We've got Disco R1. They say, you mentioned that a good time to get an LLC is somewhere around 100K invested. Is that 100K invested or 100K worth of value in assets? It's around 100K of value in assets. And it's actually a little bit less than that. Somewhere around $80,000 of current value in assets is probably the time you should start looking at an LLC, especially if you are going to take profit during this cycle or use the assets to produce income in some way. Or if you think they're going to appreciate to the point where you want to, complete the gift into an asset protection trust, and you want a way to squeeze that value down to get as much of your assets in there as you can, or you want to set up an insurance policy on the other side of price appreciation and be able to get the tax benefits that come along with that. If you're going to take profit, you might use that to offset the income there that you would receive through a key employee insurance policy. So a lot of benefits to the LLC. If that's something you guys are interested in, we do provide that at digitalfamilyoffice.io. You can just go to the site there. It's normally $3,000 to set that LLC up, but we can provide it for you if you want to put in the code 50OFF, 50OFF, DAG, LLC. Gets you 50% off, so it's $1,500 all in. You get the articles of incorporation or organization, EIN letter from the IRS, registered agent there in Wyoming, certificate of good standing, BOIR if we need to file it. We'll see here what the lawsuit comes out in Texas and where that ruling sits at the end of the year, and the operating agreement. That's going to be the most expensive piece if you go to an attorney and get it drafted. This is specific for a investment company that manages digital assets and other alternative investments, is what we provide people. Would be somewhere between $1,800 and $2,500 just on it by itself. If you go get that drafted by an attorney that has the capability to do it the right way. So we do all of it end to end, everything that you'd want, and maintain the LLC over time with you for the $1,500. Make it super easy and simple. And we give you a full guide on how to move the assets into the LLC, step-by-step process, along with a video on how to set up a bank account for the LLC as well, so that you can take profits and know that you're doing it the right way. So anyway, would love to provide those things for you guys if that's something you're interested in. I know with the pullback in the market, we've seen a little regression here, but I think that's an even better time to get in and go ahead and get everything set up before we spring to the upside here in the near future. And it is a requirement if you do want to work with Digital Wealth Partners that the assets are held inside of an entity, whether that's a trust, an IRA, an LLC, an LTD, or some other foundation. We do require a wrapper around the assets, and there's a multitude of reasons for that, but we do require that as a prerequisite to work with a client. So Again, if you're interested, it's at digitalfamilyoffice.io, and you can just type in LLC up in the right corner search bar. It'll come up. You go to LLC formation, and then you type in the code 5050 OFF DAG, like Digital Ascension Group LLC. There at checkout, and you make sure it drops to $1,500. Pull the trigger on it. We should have it back to you within 3 to 8 business days in most circumstances. Sometimes faster. We have one over here on TikTok that I wanted to grab. Joseph Jones. He says, Jake, what will be a bigger catapult for the XRP price? Official lawsuit drop or XRP ETF? Easily. Well, so you're going to have one and then the other. They're not going to approve the ETF until they end the lawsuit, unless we get congressional clarity around XRP, which we could through stablecoin regulation. But the ETF that's how they're going to move mountains of liquidity into XRP all at one time. And so, that is going to be the biggest catalyst, in my opinion, for price appreciation on XRP, is the ETFs and when those are launched. We currently have 11 XRP ETFs sitting there waiting for approval by the SEC. We actually talked to Canary Capital earlier today. They filed the first XRP ETF earlier this year. If you don't want to count BlackRock's, that was the fake one back in 23. But them, and then they also filed, I think, the first Hedera ETF as well. So super excited to continue conversations with them. But yeah, super bullish on the asset, and I do think it's the ETFs that we need to be looking out for. Sean Size says, is there a time frame into 2025? Yeah, I think 4 digits this year all day long for XRP. And then McCaber 3473 says, what's your thoughts on Ondo? Ondo's huge. And what will be the impact of their big event tomorrow? Yeah, so they released a way to be able to tokenize stocks, bonds, and commodities today on their deal. They've partnered with Ripple to be able to provide those services. So, big deal for Ondo, big deal for XRP. Super bullish on both of those assets here in 2025. This individual, thank you for the super chat. They say, hi, Jake. How are you? Thank you for your podcast. Appreciate you. Swift has 578 transactions per second in 2022 on average. Can RippleNet scale up enough? Yeah, so the XRPL can currently handle up to 1,500 transactions per second, or TPS. So that would only take up about a third of what the XRPL can handle on the mainnet. Payment channels, again, between trusted parties, it can scale infinitely. So, between that and then, again, I think there will be a subnet to the XRPL that's either implicit or explicit to the ledger. And, that was actually given to me by Matt Hamilton, when I asked him, how that would be possible. That was his explanation to me, is that you would need a subnet that was either implicit or explicit to the network that would allow it to scale. So payment channels work, but I think that there may be something else that somebody builds or has built that will allow it to scale beyond that. But, like you mentioned here, 578 transactions per second, or TPS, in 2022 on average, easily handleable on the XRPL. Thank you again for the super chat, brother. We got one more here. We got James Hall. How are you, sir? Good to see you. USA has 9.2 trillion of debt that must be dealt with this year, probably refinanced. What might this mean for us, and what might it mean for XRP holders? Well, so I mentioned earlier, before we scrolled down here, we talked about how they could offset the debt by taking over Ripple's escrow and then pushing the price of XRP to 4 digits, which is what I anticipated going to this year. And, there's a lot of catalysts and other things that have to happen for that to transpire, but, we'll forego that for a moment and just focus on this conversation. That's $48 trillion worth of value. We got 36 trillion that we've got to offset, and they could easily refinance the other 9.2 here that's going to come due here in 2025 against the upside in XRP that would be above and beyond. We'd actually be in a surplus for the first time in a long time, I think since Reagan, here in the US, if they were to utilize XRP in that capacity, and it came to fruition the way that I spoke about it earlier. So Huge for us, for sure. I do think that XRP ends up a tier one asset designated by the BIS. I've mentioned that lots of times before. I don't know that there's anybody else out there that's even looked at that possibility. Maybe Chad Steinberg is the only other guy that I think I've ever heard mention something like that. That's been my mantra for a couple years now. And so, anyway, yeah, I think that that's probably the reality of the situation. The U.S. knows that, and that's likely what they'll lean on in order to be able to work that way. Or they'll issue gold-backed bonds, right? That'll be the other way that they could go about it. Judy Sheldon has discussed that possibility, but she's looking to do that on the 250th anniversary of the U.S. 2026, July 4th, 2026, 50-year gold bonds that would mature on the 300th anniversary of the U.S. I think she's, what does that end up being? 2076 would be the year that those gold bonds would mature. So they're going to have to do something here. People no longer trust that the U.S. is. We used to be the world's largest creditor nation. We're obviously the largest debtor nation in the world now. So we're going to have to do something to shore that up. I think adding digital assets as a strategic reserve asset would do that if it's XRP in particular. And then also the tariffs, I think, will do a lot to reshore or onshore a lot of the manufacturing that's been pushed overseas to be more competitive. So excited, for the rest of my lifetime. I know these last 4 years have been very unsure and unstable for a lot of people. And I do think that we're in for another volatile year here in 2025. But I'm looking, over the coming decades that I think U.S. will remain a pretty significant superpower, and we're poised for a lot of upside here in our markets and in digital assets. We got that Clit Destroyer 420 again. He says, "Love the lives. Appreciate you being here, brother. Could you explain what exactly collapses Tether? I understand delisting, but what's the kaboom catalyst that collapses it with BTC?" So there's a direct correlation almost for Tether being printed and the appreciation in BTC's price. If you look at the two charts over one another, correlation doesn't always equal causation, but in this case, I'm extremely confident that it does. They actually used the Tether that they mint out of thin air to go buy the BTC, and they've used it to back their balance sheet. They've been audited, but not by a Big Four accounting firm. I think it was a top 13 accounting firm that did the audit. And now they've offshored their operations completely to El Salvador. So I think it'll end up being sanctions. I think that that's what will cause Tether. And I don't even know that it'll collapse. I think it's just going to blow up the market. With a liquidity crisis like that across exchanges, I don't know if you've ever tried to trade any large volumes in and out of USDC or another stablecoin aside from Tether. It's a horrible experience. There's a ton of slippage. There's not enough volume on these other stable coins at high values to be able to transact anything. So if anybody wants, let's say we have another scare in the market for whatever reason, Bitcoin gets linked to child trafficking, and that's the narrative that they put out to the public. Whether it's true or not, okay, it doesn't matter. You're going to have a lot of people that have bought the ETF immediately liquidate their positions. Instability in Tether would also cause doubt in the crypto market. You'd have people running for the hills looking to exit into anything that they could, and that's when I think you could see a lot of people move, especially if XRP was moving higher or flipped Bitcoin. I think that would just exacerbate the unwinding there and push the value of XRP up. If you haven't ever read the Shane Ellis theory, I would also encourage you to go check that out. So he talks about a situation where an exchange becomes illiquid and has a credit crisis or a credit freeze, and then they're able to basically push the value of XRP up to be able to provide liquidity in that circumstance and solve that problem. And that's where 589 comes from, is actually that circumstance. So, and it was math. He showed the math behind how it could happen just by the volume on one exchange, not all the exchanges globally that haven't delisted Tether. We finally got the delisting the other day for Crypto.com, and I do think that many others here in the U.S. will follow suit in the near future with MiCA regulations and then stablecoin regulations passing along. A lot of these exchanges are going to want to issue their own stablecoin, right? Like why would you use Tether when you could back your own stablecoin with U.S. Treasuries and have a dollar denominated asset and de-risk from Tether also with Bitcoin on Tether's balance sheet that's currently in litigation between them and Celsius. They won't be able to de-risk from that position, and they will be out of compliance by the U.S. government. So one way or another, either because of the transactions that they've allowed for Iran and for Russia while they've been sanctioned, or because they're not able to get compliant with stablecoin regulations, I do think you're going to see a mass delisting of Tether and a liquidity crisis across exchanges if that were to be mandated here in the U.S. So hopefully, that explains that for you. And the liquidity crisis is what would affect BTC because you now have the majority of the BTC value propped up by the ETFs. If there was a big move down, all of those people begin to liquidate. You've also got bots that are going to start to liquidate that. There's going to be a huge amount of downward pressure to liquidate Bitcoin. And those are unrealized losses for the investment banks because they wouldn't be able to do that immediately. They don't settle real time or trade real time like blockchain does. So anyway, we will have to see. I think that's what's going to cause it. I could be wrong, but we all know it's coming. We've got, I guess this is me here. I've posted. If you wouldn't mind, like, subscribe. Go check out the mastermind again. Here is the promo code if you want to check it out for a month for free. It's Beyond Broke, the number 1 MO. It's your free month there in the mastermind with the Discord. We do a lot of stuff like this where I mention all kinds of things I don't talk about here that are a bit more private. And privy. They're in the mastermind talking about the chiefs that come out of the tent that I talk to on an occasional basis. We've got a couple of people over here on TikTok. They say, how high can XRP be by the end of this month? It's all event driven. So if we get an unwind or the reverse carry trade, it could be 4 digits by the end of the month. If that doesn't happen and it runs on speculation and it's just the constraints that exist now, maybe the investment banks will continue to purchase in anticipation of the ETFs. I think that's what propped the value up this far. I don't think retail is what pushed it up this far. I think it's institutions coming in and buying up XRP off the exchanges to be able to have enough to be able to support their spot ETFs. If we get more people, applying for a spot ETF, we already have 11 of them. I think you could see some more buying off of the open market and the retail side. But to push a whole lot higher than here, you're going to need catalysts to take it there. And the time frame on that, I am not sure of. I do think Q1 makes a lot of sense this year, and I do think we're on the precipice or even starting to see the reverse carry trade unwind. But it is going to require those catalysts to see prices higher than where they're currently sitting. We got Lucas Walker. He says, thinking of holding my 2400 XRP for Trump's term. I think that that's a fantastic outlook, brother. So an investment to me is at least 4 years. If you are holding things any less than 4 years, you are trading. You could be long-term swing trading, but you are still trading. An investor is invested for at least 4 years in something, and that's because they believe in the long-term outlook. So if that's you, then happy to have you here with us in the XRP Army and excited that you got in at the time that you did. We've got D2. He says, hi, Jake. When can we see receipts for our XRP in our custody account to be implemented for a return? And do we need to be accredited to use that feature? So you should be able to see your XRP there, either on XRP Scan or in your app. If you are working with us to custody those assets. So I'm not sure what you mean by receipts. When it comes to the returns at the current time, you do have to be accredited. That's not my choice. That's regulators. I had a solution in place and they told me, go rework it. So I'm working on it. Okay. I do want, we are a family office, so I have to reiterate that again. We normally work with high net worth individuals and those that are beyond accredited for sure. Sometimes qualified purchasers. A lot of time they're qualified purchasers that have over 5 million or more in liquid value or assets outside their primary residence. So we do want to take care of the little guy, though. We have a lot of people in the mastermind that have trusted us and are working with us there at Digital Wealth Partners because they believe that their assets are going to be worth far in excess of $20 million in the very near future. And so, we do want to build products that we can provide to those individuals, and we are working on that. We've got a few things in the pipe right now, and then potentially an announcement tomorrow that'll be very exciting for people. Potentially, well, I'm not potentially, the first ever regulated XRP product that's approved today will be announced by Digital Wealth Partners in the very near future. So excited to see that happen and get that out. Exclusive for you guys here. You heard it first. We'll tell you what it is in the press release that comes out. So anyway, yeah, we're definitely looking to provide returns for people irrespective of their accredited status or not. But at the current time, it is required that you are accredited in order to be able to participate in the offerings that we have. But we do have ways to be able to generate returns on your XRP held in institutional custody, insured, that are far in excess of the fees that we charge, and will grow your portfolio and your allocation to XRP over time. Super proud of my team over there, by the way, at Digital Wealth Partners. They've curated some stuff that literally doesn't exist. We've built this from scratch, and to have it actually pulled together and workable is remarkable. David Floyd says, "Hey Jake, thanks for all the incredible info." Absolutely, brother. Appreciate you being here and your support and the kind words. My wife has received emails to set up the LLC. Do we fund it with all of our digital assets, or should we keep some personal? That's up to you. We've seen people do both. I have all of my assets in the LLC, but that is also because I plan to use them, take profit on them, borrow against them, generate returns with them, and I want the full breadth of the tax code to be able to offset my tax implications. And I also, want to be able to reduce the value to, complete the gift. This year, I think, is the highest gift tax threshold we're going to have in our lifetimes. We're currently sitting at $13.99 million that an individual can gift over their lifetime. Almost $28 million per married couple that you can gift over your lifetime out of your taxable estate into a trust. And here's the kicker: if it's in the LLC, this is why it's a benefit. So let's say you got 100,000 XRP, it goes to $50. Does less than what I think. That's okay. $50, I think people would still be happy with. You got $50 million. Well, actually, it'd be 500. So let's say it goes to 500. You got $50 million. That's a lot, and it's over the gift tax threshold. But if you already had it in an LLC, then you could gift small pieces of equity to your siblings or your kids. And now you have multiple people on the cap table. So now we get a 401a valuation, or 409a valuation done on the LLC, and we can reduce the value by about 30%. Well, now you're pretty close to that $30 million mark. And you would want to keep a portion of the assets outside of the trust in the LLC, because over time you can pass the taxes from the trust to the LLC and pay them out of this bucket and let the assets in the trust continue to compound without ever having to sell to cover taxes. So we work with some of the best estate planners in the nation when it comes to digital assets. They've done more digital asset protection trusts and C formations and anything else that we currently work on than anybody else in the nation for digital assets. And so it's up to you. I've seen it done both ways. If you plan to sell the assets or do anything with them, moving them into the LLC would be the ideal situation, David. And thank you for the super chat, brother. And again, if you guys want to go check that out, you want to set up an LLC for your digital assets, you can go check it out. It is at digitalfamilyoffice.io, and you just put in the code 50 off. There's Living Legacy. Appreciate you, brother. 50 off DAG LLC, all capitalized like that, gets you an LLC for your digital assets to manage them and get all the benefits that I'm discussing here for $1,500 end to end, all done for you. Or you can go do it yourself. I mentioned all the things that you need earlier. You need articles of organization. You need an EIN number. You need a registered agent. If you filed it in Wyoming, that's something else I didn't discuss. I recommend Wyoming. You don't have to do Wyoming, but I recommend it. You get three things. You get attorney-client privilege there, so you get to maintain anonymity and privacy on your LLC. If you do it in your state, it's most likely that your name and address are going to appear on there. Not so good when you have a bunch of money. People can find you pretty easy. Number two is in Wyoming, you have no state taxes. So, if you reside in New York or California, that's a big plus. You do have to file reciprocity with those states, and there is some nuance there about keeping the capital in the LLC versus your personal name. Just know that. If you pay yourself, you're still going to have to pay the state taxes. It is pass-through taxation, but we can work that out. And then the last piece of that is Wyoming is the most progressive state when it comes to digital asset regulation. They are the friendliest when it comes to that. Texas and Florida and a few other people have kind of hopped on board, Tennessee as well, and are progressive with things. Utah is also working on some legislation, but Wyoming already has it in place, and to operate things there and work with them, it tends to be one of the most pleasant experiences I've ever had with companies and formations. So anyway, happy to work with you guys in that capacity. Here's the link if you want to go check it out. Living Legacy, again, appreciate you on this. The link is here. It's digitalfamilyoffice.io/services/LLC entity formation. And again, you can use that code 50OFF DAG LLC, gets you everything for $1,500. We have Jeremiah. He says, I convinced a wealthy friend to buy $1,000 worth of XRP yesterday. Today, he's irritated. What are your thoughts on a crypto exchange in Dallas, Texas? Look, if you're sad after a day of down in this market, this isn't for you. You probably need to get your friend to sell. I say that. I have people that text me all the time, what's happening in the market? But they hold on because they know I have conviction, and they're up from where they bought, so they're not mad at this point, But Dallas, so Hedera is here. I think the Texas Stock Exchange will be here in Dallas. I think that Dallas becomes an epicenter for financial markets in the future, and it would be interesting to see a crypto exchange here in Dallas. I think that the Texas Stock Exchange will be a tokenized stock exchange when it launches in early 2026. So I think that you will see institutions and other people purchase a lot of exchanges and roll them underneath them. I think you're going to see a huge amount of acquisitions and IPOs here in 2025 in this space. And I don't know, when that's going to happen. But if you're referring to the Texas Stock Exchange, I do think that is going to be tokenized here in Dallas. And appreciate you on the super chat. Hopefully your friend hangs in there. We've got Off the Grid Hero. He says, could XRP, XLM, Stronghold, Quant, AVAX be top 10 in the year 2030? I don't see Quant or Stronghold in that group, but AVAX, XRP, and XLM I could definitely see in the top 10 in the year 2030. I'm going to grab maybe one more super chat over here on Twitter and X, and YouTube, and then we're going to hop over here to TikTok. Chris says, what do you think XRP is going to long term? How long is long term? If you're talking like 50 years from now, I think it could be $1 million a piece. I know that sounds absolutely absurd, but we've already seen Bitcoin go from $1 to 100,000 in just 15 years. XRP is 12 years old. Be 13 years old this year on June 2nd. And I think it could easily be 4 digits this year, 5 digits next year in 2026, 2027. And, sky's the limit after that. Once we start seeing derivatives and other financial products and whole economies, metaverses and interplanetary commerce move on to the network, your guess is as good as mine. I think that the people that own this asset 20 years from now will be some of the wealthiest people on the planet. And look, here, and I'm going to say this too, disclaimer. I sound crazy. I'm aware of how crazy I sound, but I've done the research. I woke up every single day for a year and a half and tried to figure out how I was wrong about this, because I'm like, surely not. Like, I'm not that smart. I'm look, for me to figure this out and it be the one thing that's going to be the thing out of all 40,000 cryptos, like, come on, you know. But I did the research and I tried to poke holes in it. People ask me questions all the time on here that I'm able to refute or answer fairly easily, about the network, the technology, the actual constraints around it, the adoption, the use case, the partners, the people that are running validators, and why they wouldn't just build their own thing, or the taxes or whatever else on it. Um, I've ate, slept, and breathed uh, digital assets for the past 4 years. And again and again and again, I cannot find a better opportunity than XRP. If you could show me one, if you could show me something else that was going to be designated a tier one asset by the BIS and used at scale by financial institutions and had the ROI potential that XRP has, I'd switch in a heartbeat. I'm always open to new information. I'm always try to be open-minded. But in order to, work in this world and make decisions, you have to create biases and go with those, right? So I'm always here for more information. But anyway, I know how ridiculous that sounds to say that XRP is going to go from $3 or whatever it is today to, $1 million someday, but it's there. If the value moves on the network and it is settling the volume of transactions that I'm highly confident that it will in that time frame, and economies continue to grow and GDP continues to grow because of the efficiencies and the technologies that are created, that's what's coming. So Shane says, is 10K XRP time to consider an LLC? So you'd be at $30,000 ish to $25,000 ish. I'd just keep buying more XRP or other digital assets, man. So this is the deal for me. I always look at cost of benefit. And when you get over the $80,000, $100,000 worth of digital assets, yeah, you probably the tax benefit that you're going to get from moving the assets into the LLC then makes a lot of sense. But if you're short of that, just keep investing, like make more money, and it doesn't matter to me, just so you know, like we have the service and we want to help people, but at the end of the day, you can go do this stuff on your own. I always like to provide the information so you can do it yourself. And this is with everything that we do, by the way. I've always sold all three, okay? Because everybody's different. Some people just want to do it themselves. They want to learn and go handle it. Cool, learn and go handle it. You can work with a registered agent in Wyoming. You can go file on their website. You can apply for the EIN on the IRS's website. You can go try to set up the bank account by yourself. You can get the certificate of good standing. You can file your BOIR. You can draft your own operating agreement, or pay an attorney to do so, or you can just get it handed to you. So we always provide you do it, done with you, and done for you for people. And everybody, has a different prerogative. Some people, like I said, want to do it themselves. Some people want their handheld, and some people just want you to do it for them, and they'll pay for it. So we try to provide all three. And the other thing is, I just want people to start thinking about this stuff before price appreciation happens. How are you going to position yourself? What are you going to do when you look at your phone or your wallet or wherever you're holding your digital assets and they are in the millions of dollars? How are you, what are you going to, do you have an exit strategy? Do you know what the tax implications are going to be? How are you going to protect that? How do you want to pass it on to your kids? Do you want to have to deal with probate? Do you have a living will? Do you want to set it up in a trust? There's just a ton of considerations, and it's like drinking from a fire hose. I know that it is, and it's very daunting, right? But you can learn it. Everybody here that's on these lives are very intelligent people. If you're here now and you're looking at these assets before price appreciation happens, you found a holy grail. You found a fat pitch in your life, and I would swing at it. I know I am. So anyway, I just want people to start thinking about these things and position themselves correctly and make sure that they are able to, excuse me, make the most of this opportunity. in their lifetime. Go back over here to X. We got another super chat here. Hunter, thank you, sir. He says, with XRP price appreciation, will DWP's minimums raised to be able to join? Yes. Yeah. On the other side of a $10 XRP, we're going to move the minimum to 1.1 million. And there's a lot of reasons for that. One, the accreditation requirement. And secondly, we really don't make any money. Like I'm doing this. I've funded it myself. I hope that someday, there's reciprocity and we do make a lot of money and we're able to help a lot of people make a lot of money and get compensated well to do so. But if your portfolio is less than 1.1 million, we cannot charge any performance fees on those assets. So even if we generated, let's say you had $500,000 with us and we double your money to $1 million, we get none of it, other than the AUM fee that we charge, and which covers the cost of custody and insurance and compliance. We really don't make much on that. We really don't make any money until we're able to, generate significant returns for people and be compensated for doing so. So to answer your question, we're trying to help people out and get them in a position where they can sleep good at night, know that they have insurance on their assets and that they're structured and set up for success. But yeah, it's at a point in the near future when XRP is over $10, we are going to raise the minimum for anybody outside the mastermind, because we got to take care of those people to at least 1.1 million. We have Jeremiah again. Thank you for the super chat, man. He says, tokenization of assets like homes seems so futuristic that it sounds more foreign than crypto to all my neighbors. They won't even know. So there's this narrative that, everything's going to be tokenized. It's going to be on the blockchain. We're going to have smart contracts. They're not going to know or care. Okay. What's going to happen is they're going to have a Google Wallet or an Apple Wallet on their phone. And their house is going to end up getting a digital title, is what they're probably going to call this stuff. It won't be an NFT. It won't be called tokenized. It'll be a digital title. And it'll be there in their wallet on their phone where they can see it. And they'll be the only ones that can access it with a two-factor authentication or a biometric. And they'll be able to transact with it. And it'll move on the blockchain, and there'll be smart contracts, and there'll be all the cool stuff on the back end with the protocols and all the stuff that we nerd out about. But the general public, they don't care. They just want it to be faster and easier to do. And that's really what this provides. It's just efficiencies in financial products and structuring and transactions. That's it. And if it's faster and easier, people will do it. So I do think that the real estate itself is going to take a bit longer, just because I think it's going to have to be subsidized. I think they're going to have to force all of these courthouses that have all these deeds and titles on properties to get them into a computer and then use an oracle to get them on chain. IOTA, I think, is going to be a big piece of that. But I think that's a little bit further out. Like you mentioned, so futuristic. I think tokenization of real estate, I think, could happen by 2030. Right? So we're 2025 here, another 5 years. And I think it'll become a lot more prominent around that time frame. It could be an accelerated time frame from that, but there would have to be some other catalyst to move that along, or again, government intervention or subsidization in order to incentivize people to escalate that up their priority list. But yeah, it'll just be, you'll have it right there on your phone. You'll have a digital title. You'll be able to buy and sell a fraction of your home if you wanted to. Borrow against it much easier. Line of credit, a HELOC. There'll be a bunch of things that just become not instant, but much faster than they are today. He's got it again. Thank you for the super chats, brother. He says, Musk tweeted that the Treasury belongs on blockchain. It should be on a public blockchain. We should be able to see and audit our government spending. Yeah, I absolutely agree. Every crypto-friendly seems to react in awe of that as a possibility, as though that's something they hadn't even thought of. I mean, public goods and government efficiency, I think, should probably run on a blockchain. Like, it should be auditable by the public. If we're paying taxes, out of our pocket to fund something, it would be nice to know what that money is being spent on. Or if we're printing more money, that's an inflation tax on the consumer. You may not be paying that tax like out of your pocket, but you really are, because now your money is worth less and goes, it's not worth as much, so you can't buy as much in the economy, right? So it's an invisible tax to most people. People think that things just inherently cost more over time. That's really not how this works. In a manufactured system, it is, but everything should cost less over time. If technology is progressing, it's inherently deflationary, and the efficiency of production should reduce cost for production of goods, and that should be passed on to the consumer. Or prices should be at least held stable. They shouldn't be increasing over time. Companies would just be happy to increase their margins by driving efficiencies in their manufacturing. So anyway, it's very interesting to me, the paradigm that most people live in, and how that's been constructed to be just normal over the past 100 years. But yeah, to your point, once things are on chain and it's auditable, I think that there's going to be a reckoning, and there's an accountability component to that as well, which I think our governments need, and I'm excited to see that happen with Doge. Storm Striker, appreciate you on the super chat, brother. He says, if XRP is for institutions, then why would price appreciate each year, especially huge price appreciation? If XRP is for the institutions, then why would price appreciate each year, especially huge price appreciation? For lots of reasons. They need to be able to offset their debts. So if they held an asset on their books right now that was very low value, and all they had to do was start using it to be able to offset unrealized losses or debts on their books, liabilities and assets. Right now we got a lot of liabilities, not that many assets, but if the assets appreciate above or even with the liabilities, then now they're solvent, right? So that's a fantastic mechanism that they could use. And if they wanted to continue to borrow money or go deeper in debt each year, all they would have to do is start transacting on with higher volumes, or push the price of that asset up, or borrow against it in an infinite banking concept to be able to finance their business transactions, or whatever they wanted to do to be able to lend and earn more on that money. There's a lot of mechanisms by which they would need the asset to appreciate each year. And they would definitely want a huge appreciation at the moment to be able to offset the debts that they have. So hopefully that explains that for you. I don't know why they, maybe explain why they wouldn't want it to appreciate in large amounts. And again, happy to understand. Again, I'm always here looking for data. We've got CR. They say, when you say DWP offers insurance on crypto clients, can you provide more detail? Yes, we can. How much is insured? What amount is capped at? Thank you. So Anchorage actually has the insurance on the digital assets there that we hold in their qualified custody. And it's up to $100 million, and it is crime insurance. So it's actually, if there is a hack or loss by the customer, that is when it's insured. It's not in kind. I would love it to be, but it's not. It's in cash at the time of loss, and it does take a little bit to get refunded if that happens. The odds of that happening are undescribably low. And the reason for that is the back end and the way that the assets are held is significantly different than a cold wallet. So normally in a cold wallet, you have your seed phrases, you write those down on a piece of paper. You have two keys, one that comes into the wallet, one that comes out of the wallet. You don't even get the seed phrases to be able to regenerate the wallet. If your assets are held in institutional custody, they're on an algorithmic blockchain. And that blockchain encrypts the two keys for the in and out, shards them, and then holds them across hardware security modules and level 4 facilities globally. And it requires multi-sig to initiate a transaction on the blockchain. So if, you'd need a quantum computer to be able to hack all of those level 4 facilities and the HSMs all at the same time to bring back the keys together to unencrypt it, and then be able to mimic or deep fake multiple people to sign for the transactions off their devices. Like, it's, I can't say it's impossible, but it's infinitesimally unprobable that it could happen, and that's why the insurance exists and Lloyd's is willing to do it. And again, it's insured up to 100 million. So, and we have species insurance. If you want to, say your assets go beyond 100 million, we can purchase, additional insurance on your account if that's something that you're interested in. Thank you for the super chat and fantastic question, by the way. I know a lot of people kind of like breeze over some stuff, and drilling down or double clicking on it is always helpful. So appreciate you asking the question there. Let's see here. Yep, appreciate you, brother. Thank you for the kind words. We'll scroll up here on TikTok and see if we can grab a couple. We've got, you said I can't see the name of your company behind you. So it's Digital Ascension Group. There we go. Now you can see it. You can see it real good over here on X and YouTube. Yeah, it's a little different angle over here on TikTok. So Digital Ascension Group is the parent company to Digital Family Office and Digital Wealth Partners, which are the two corporations we use to provide the full scope of services to our clients when it comes to digital assets and professional services, including, but not limited to, CPA, accountant, wealth management, estate planning. We have private security, concierge service, private jets and yachts, asset management, financial committee, governance for your family office, setup of your family office, insurance. The list goes on and on and on of the things that we've been able to curate and partnerships that we have to be able to provide services. If you guys want to go check out Myria, Ray Fleming is the gentleman over there, and really cool concierge service, very high end. That gentleman is brilliant. Used to manage Justin Timberlake's family office. They're one of our partners. A lot of just really good people in the space. So we'll continue to build out, that scope of services. As people ask for things, we don't say no. We just figure it out for people. We got Mike. He says, will DWP continue to accept new customers when they reach desired limits after appreciation? Yes. Yeah, we're happy to work with people. We're continuing to scale out the team. I just interviewed 2 more new advisors today. We've got somebody coming on for the onboarding process that's going to start here, I think, next week. We just hired a CTO to be able to build out more infrastructure, continue to expand the team. We've got about 25 people working for us now. And I expect that we'll continue to grow to close to 100 employees by the end of the year if we see the price appreciation that I think we're going to. So anyway, super excited about that. It's not always fun having to manage people and deal with conflicts and constraints. But I think we have the right team, the right people in place to be able to execute on a fantastic vision that's been put together. And everybody knows where we're headed, and we're all in alignment, and we wake up every day with a good attitude to get there. So Terry says, do you have any insight on Block DAG project? Yeah, so DAG is huge. I'm not sure if that's exactly what you're discussing, but DAG has some pretty significant contracts with the government, and I think that they're a sleeper. I think they're at like 5 cents right now for that asset, and I think that could go substantially higher as well. Not financial advice, just something that you might go look at. I do think that the potential on XRP is higher, and that's why I personally don't own anything else other than XRP, because it's the only thing I'm absolutely sure on. Jacob Adams has asked, was the code 50 off DAG LLC? You got it, brother. That is it. If you would like to set up an LLC, you're just going to go to digitalfamilyoffice.io. Type in LLC in the top corner, and it should have a little drop down, and you'll be able to use that code to get your LLC set up within the next 3 to 8 business days here to make sure that you're set for being able to offset taxes and protect yourself on the other side of price appreciation. DAG is Constellation. Yep, they sure are. They also have Panasonic recently. Yeah, so Constellation, we may have them at our family office event here in Dallas. Um, it's a curated room, invite only to that event. Super excited to put that on here in April. And last year we put it on in September, had almost half a trillion in the room across the family offices that attended, and a ton of other, great professionals in the space that came and spoke. And I think this year, we got an even bigger lineup, more speakers, and should have 300 to 400 individuals in attendance, and a lot of family offices in that group. Storm Striker says, I didn't ask my question properly. He says, I meant, why would it appreciate every year if the price is supposed to be stable and a stable price is needed for institutional transactions? I understand more money. Okay, so this good question. Okay, excuse me. So if you look at the price chart, you can kind of see how this works, and everything works on a logarithmic scale. The higher it gets, the more stable it gets. You can look at Bitcoin, and the volatility is reduced over time as prices increase. So it needs to be it needs to be dynamic and expandable to continue to be able to add more value to the network and transaction volume to the network. If it was a stable price and it was fixed, like stuck to gold, um, it's not going to be dynamic or malleable enough. And if it's rigid, and there's more transactional volume that needs to be pushed over the network, then it's not going to work. So it just needs to be stable for the 3 to 4 seconds that's allowing the transactions to settle. And the higher the value of XRP, the more stability is in the price. And I also think they're going to make it tax exempt, because there may still be some fluctuations, especially if you're moving large volumes across the network. If it's $4 or $5 difference when it lands on the other side, either more or less, at scale, that's a problem, right? Specifically, if it's more, then there could be potential tax implications. So I think that's why Trump's going to make American-based cryptos tax-free on the capital gains, because it makes a lot of sense that they would be used in that context if that's the case. But XRP was made to transact at $10,000 or more, because that is where it becomes significantly more stable than it is today. And you'd take, billions or trillions of dollars of volume to move the price, just a percentage one direction or the other, because the market cap at that point would be in the quadrillions or septillions, right? And that's the other reason people are like, oh, market cap can't go that high. Well, if it did, it would be an extremely stable price for XRP, because it could handle huge volumes of transactions with no volatility in the value of the asset, right? And I think when they need to move it up, they'll just move a whole nother section of the financial system onto the network, and there'll be a supply and demand shock, and you'll see the chart gap up, and then it'll be stable again for an extended period of time. I think there'll be steps where it goes like that. I don't think it'll just trend up and to the right like a lot of people think. I think it's going to be like boom, set, move along sideways for a while, boom, set, move along sideways for a while. And so that's how I see it playing out. Could definitely be wrong, but that seems to be what other people that know what's going to happen have mentioned, and that's my guess as well. So hopefully that makes more sense. I think there'll be large steps, and then it'll be flat for periods of time, and that's how that'll work out, and why that makes the most sense. We've got rare supercars. Hey, cool, man. If you haven't ever been to the shop in Dallas, I'd encourage you to do that. So that's where we have our co-working space. It's fantastic. They have supercars in there. You can walk around, anything you would want. They have like Bugattis from the 1940s. They've got there's a carbon fiber Mustang that was in there for a while, a Shelby, like one of 7 in the world. Anyway, love to have you here in Dallas at one of our events, and you go check that out. He says, hey, Jake, is there a reason to have a doubt in XRP because it isn't ISO compliant except through Ripple when other assets such as XLM, HBAR, or even XPR Proton do meet ISO standards? So there are no tokens by themselves that are ISOs that meet ISO standards. So ISO 20022 is a messaging standard. It's not a settlement standard. There are no tokens that are compliant. XLM and XRP are the only two digital assets that have software that they are used with that meet those requirements, and they are put out by Stellar, Ripple, and R3. Okay, so I don't know where you're getting this information from or who explained ISO to you, but it's a messaging standard that the banks use to receive and send information. So it's standardized across that model. And that's a prerequisite to being able to settle instantly, because if you had discrepancies in the information that the banks are receiving, then they would need time to reconcile that before the payment could settle. And so that's why that has to be in place prior to instant settlement. And that's why XRP and XLM have those softwares that were developed by Ripple and Stellar to be able to meet those prerequisites, then enable the use of those digital assets to be able to settle them. But there actually are zero ISO compliant digital assets. There's just companies that have built software and messaging systems that meet those qualifications and then use the token to settle. So appreciate the question. XPR Proton, we met with them years ago, talked to their head of operations in the EU. I don't think he works for them anymore. I was not impressed. We asked them a few questions and tried to, talk to them about how their software worked and what instant settlement was. And their head of operations couldn't even explain the simplest stuff that we thought their stuff was supposed to do. And then the liquidity provision that they had to be able to build out on the network was less than $1 million. Like, you're not going to go very far with that. They don't have the partnerships. I know there's a lot of speculation around that, and maybe they get bought by somebody. Maybe that's their play. There's going to be a ton of acquisitions here. Maybe Proton Software gets bought by XLM or Stellar or somebody else that's dealing in a retail application, because again, their target market's less than $10,000 payments there for that network. Not even close to a competitor in the space for XRP. I would say their closest competitor is probably XLM or HBAR, and both of those are so far ahead of Proton that it's not even competition. But maybe they get a small portion of the market, maybe like Wise or some payment app uses them to be able to settle transactions, and they get like a 1% market share. That's always a possibility. I don't think that there's just going to be one thing at the end of the day that does stuff. I think that there's going to be a ton of networks. Well, I say a ton, a handful of networks that are the base layers that settle transactions in volume. So, but I think XRP is the only one that's going to be high value payments at scale for banks and institutions and commerce. So that's my thesis. We'll see if I'm right or not. Let's see here. We got another one from Jeremiah. He says, Rob, the XRP guy on YouTube, mentioned a company building XRP in a similar to Saylor did with Bitcoin. Do you foresee something like that happening with a companies and XRP coin wide in 1 to 5 years? I don't understand the question here. Let me read it again. Rob, the XRP guy on X and YouTube, mentioned a company buying XRP in a similar way to Saylor with Bitcoin. Do you foresee something like that happening with companies in XRP coin? Okay, all right. So buying XRP, borrowing against it, buying more XRP to double down on it, and creating a positive feedback loop for supply and demand and driving the price up. Possibly. I don't think there's enough supply on the open market for people to manipulate it like that. Like I mentioned before, there's only maybe 5% of the total supply that retail holds across exchanges and retail. So there's just too many other people that hold large amounts, and they're not going to give it up. They're going to use it to transact business or hold it on their balance sheet. So I don't know that you'll see the same type of price manipulation like you've seen on Bitcoin with XRP. I don't think that that'll be feasible. And then again, if it does reach the values that we think it's going to be, then the market cap's going to be so high that to manipulate the value, you'd have to have quadrillions of dollars. And I don't know that there's any company company out there like that. That's a whole nother market. That's the derivatives market that would be required to move the price. So yeah, I don't anticipate something like that happening, but I would love to see it, because it would benefit us. But yeah, I don't think that that's feasible. Good question though. We've got the travel couple too. Did I hear something about a prediction of XRP in 4 digits? Yeah. So here in 2025. So I'll just give you the full domino theory. So I put this theory out back in March of last year. And this is what's required. So there's catalysts, there's outside events, there's macroeconomics, there's things at scale that have to happen. And then this becomes a solution that would drive the price that high. Okay, so it's not like it's just a magical woof and it's 4 digits. Okay, so this all begins with the reverse carry trade in Japan. So if you're not familiar with what that is, Japan has had extremely low interest rates over the past 20 years, at sometimes negative, which means you got paid money up to 1% to borrow money from somebody else. So they would pay you money to take their money and go do something with it. Unfortunately, Japan did not mandate that money was then put to work in their economy. So a lot of people borrowed the yen, swapped it for dollars, and then put it to work in our stock market here in the US or in the treasury market. And if you're clipping 1% there and you're making 4% on the treasuries in the US, making a 5% risk-free yield on money that cost you zero. You're making 5% on nothing, right? So if you had really good credit and backers, you could borrow a lot of money. And people did. Tens of trillions of dollars have been borrowed over the past 20 years in yen, okay? And then put to work in our markets and the treasury market. So here's the kicker, though. All of those loans are variable, or they're cyclic, and they come due, and you have to refinance them at higher interest rates if you want to keep that capital out. So now we have interest rates in Japan coming up substantially. Like they've gone from 0 to 1.25 on the 10% yield. On the not the 10%, the 10-year yield. Geez, it's late. We are going on an hour and a half now, so I'll probably wrap it up after I explain this. So we've had all this money borrowed, been put to work over here. Now we've got interest rates coming up on those variable loans that have to be refinanced. And now we've got interest rates in the US coming down. So those people are getting squeezed. We saw this start to unwind in August of last year. You saw a down day in the stock market of about 13% before the BOJ came out, the Bank of Japan, and said, hey, we're not going to raise interest rates anymore until market volatility stops. And they did. They held interest rates, and they've raised one time since then this year. They held off for 4.5 months before they raised interest rates again, another quarter basis point. And they need to. They need to raise interest rates because it'll benefit their economy. So that's going to continue to happen. They're backed into a corner where they're going to have to continue to do that. Otherwise, inflation ticks up too much, and then cost of living there in Japan becomes unreasonable, and they have people revolt. So anyway, there's a market dynamic where the reverse carry trade is going to unwind. People are going to sell off all of those positions, have to swap back to dollars, swap it back to yen, and repay those loans in the very near future because of where interest rates are. And I think you're already starting to see that over the past week here. People are exiting, they're running toward the door, and they're blaming that on tariffs and DeepSeek and other stuff. But it's the reverse carry trade starting to unwind. And as soon as word gets out about that, there's going to be a run for the door, and that's when you're going to see a liquidation in markets that, like, it's going to be like COVID again, to the downside. So anyway, when that happens, all the fun ensues. You're going to see a huge amount of treasuries get dumped onto the market, foreign debt holders. Japan is the largest foreign debt holder of U.S. debt. They have $1.6 trillion in treasuries that they hold, and those are going to get liquidated. They're going to sell that off. And so we're going to have to pass stablecoin regulation here in the U.S. And luckily, sure enough, it's on the floor of Congress with a bipartisan Congress, and they're going to ram it through there. And then we'll have all these large tech giants and institutions and enterprises issue private stablecoins that are dollar-backed and dollar-denominated. And guess what they're going to have in order to do that? Oh, those U.S. treasuries that are going to flow onto the market from all those foreign debt holders, and potentially even Tether, who is the fifth or sixth largest, U.S. Treasury debt holder at this point. So anyway, that gives congressional regulation to XRP. At the same time, it's going to have implications for Tether. They're going to get sanctioned or locked out because they're not going to be compliant. Again, because of the Bitcoin that's been locked up on their balance sheet in a lawsuit with Celsius, they won't be able to divest. And so they'll be delisted from all the exchanges. Exchanges go illiquid. Bitcoin becomes illiquid. People freak out. They start exiting those positions. There's a huge move down in Bitcoin with Tether imploding on itself. And that causes huge unrealized losses for the investment banks. And so they're going to need to be able to settle those losses real time. They can't pull from their positions in traditional stocks because there's already a huge amount of pressure over there from the reverse carry trade unwinding. They need to shore that up too. And they're going to have to, offset their balance sheet for now the crazy unrealized losses that they have, because they all went leveraged long with the options on Bitcoin. They didn't hedge it. So all that transpires. We also get settlement of the Ripple case at the same time. Now that we have the new SEC in here, and then we get the approval of the S1s for, the XRP ETFs, and then they're going to dump liquidity through those ETFs into XRP, drive the price up through a supply shock. And if they push it to, $1,000 a piece, they should be able to settle the back end of the stock market real time using Project Ion that was developed with the DTCC and finalized back in 2022. And all that'll happen in a very, very, very short period of time, and people will freak out. They won't know what's going on. You would see a 4-digit XRP when that transpires. And I think that's, I don't want to say imminent, but in the very near future, when that shakes out. So that's my thesis. You heard it here. I put out videos about it. When it happens, a lot of people are going to make a lot of money in a very short period of time, and that's what we've positioned ourselves for, to be able to help those people provide liquidity against XRP, set it up in insurance policies, structure your trusts, provide financial advice, give you all the professional services that you're going to need on the other side of those transactions, or appreciation, excuse me. Jennifer says, God willing. Yes, ma'am. That's what we're looking for. So anyway, and I don't think it's going to come back down. Once you have the transaction volume for the back end of the stock market and SWIFT and some of these other, financial networks settling, because there's enough, liquidity in XRP to do that, they're going to move that onto the mainnet and off the side chains with private ledgers that sit there, and price isn't coming back down. It'll be a high stable value, and again, the people that are holding these assets are going to be very well off. And again, I just want you to think about that and make sure that you are positioned and not going to squander it or waste it. Buy assets, not liabilities, and protect your wealth. So anyway, it's my story. I'm sticking to it. Hopefully that provided you some value. And got Joseph Jones. He says, people currently in the mastermind, are we still good to get in at 500K? Yes. Yeah, we'll hold on to that amount for people that are there in the mastermind. Even on the other side of price appreciation, we want to take care of that group. So again, if you want to check that out, get in there for free and make sure you're locked in for the prices. It's beyondbroke.com, and the code for the free month is beyondbroke, all capitalized, the number 1, and then MO gets you a free month there in the group. CR, he says, if I'm not mistaken, SBI, Japanese banking, was just talking a similar approach to XRP like Saylor with Bitcoin. That's quite possible. Yoshitaka Kitao is the principal there, and the SBI, they do own 10% of Ripple and 10% of R3. Very well positioned to be able to capitalize on the appreciation of XRP. Yoshitaka Kitao, mentioned that he thought that the banks in Japan would be using XRP by 2025 and by January of 2025 or February of 2025. So a little bit past his prediction, but I'm okay if he's off by a couple weeks. I'm not going to hold it against him. So anyway, yeah, maybe they may have enough of the supply to be able to do that, right? And then they may be able to push price up and manipulate things. I don't know. It would have to be a player like that. It couldn't just be some new company that spun up that doesn't have enough funding to be able to compound things like that. It would have to be a very institutional backed player, and they are. SBI. They have some crazy backers that most people don't know about. So anyway, that's a possibility, and I'm game for that. Use it as their treasury and run it up, baby. We are at the hour and a half mark here. James Hall says, I just need $6.25 to get a credit. You're already accredited, brother. We're going to get you the letter. We'll get you over the line and get you making some income there with Digital Wealth Partners in the very near future. Let me take one more over here on TikTok, and then we'll close it out for the night. We got everything down for ashes before the phoenix rises. Yeah, that's quite possible. Mandy says, why 10K? If you go back and look at David Schwartz, he is one of the original architects of the XRPL. When it first came out, it was called XNS, and then they rebranded it to Ripples, and then XRP in 2014 to mimic the exchange rate peg that the IMF talked about in their paper that they launched in 2014, the white paper. Anyway, David Schwartz, one of the original architects, and Arthur Brito have both come out and said that $10,000 would be the ideal price or the minimum for XRP to operate in the capacity that it was designed for. And it's also indicative of the amount of decimals that the token has. It would be 2 decimals to the right of the decimal. So pennies, and it would go down to pennies to be able to transact, and up to, $99,000, 999.99 cents would be a very robust amount of liquidity to be able to provide transactions at scale globally. So maybe it doesn't ever get to 1 million. Maybe that's where it sits. Maybe it's 100,000 over the long term, and that's where she rides. But I'm still okay with that. If I'm missing, if I'm 1 0 short, if I'm 1 deviation short, I'm good with that. That's still a lot more money than I've ever thought I would have in my whole life for the most part. So I'll go ahead and wrap it up here. We got one more super chat and then we'll close it down. What's your opinion on XRP price this year and why? Corey Stinson, appreciate you on that. I do think it'll be 4 digits. I think everything that I just discussed with the reverse carry trade and the domino theory will play out here in 2025. And everybody's going to be having a hard time understanding what just happened when all that shakes out. So with that, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. I hope you guys have a wonderful evening. Thank you again for watching here on a Wednesday night. We do this every Monday and Wednesday night here on X, YouTube, and TikTok. If you want to go check out the mastermind, we talk about all this and way more there in the group. We run private deals, do a lot of things. You can go check it out. It is a free code. Here we go. Go ahead and move this down to the screen. You can use the code Beyond Broke, the number 1, and then MO. That gets you 1 free month there in the group. We are going to lock it down at a $10 XRP and raise the prices for at least 30 days. And then we'll be much more stringent on who's allowed in the group on the other side of that. If you do want to get your LLC to make sure that you are set up for previous to price appreciation, you've got more than $80,000 currently in value in digital assets. If you're less than that, just keep buying digital assets. You don't need an LLC. Okay. I want you to make money. Like you don't need it yet. But if you are on the other side of that, it is something to consider. You can use the code 50OFF50OFF there at digitalfamilyoffice.io. That's digitalfamilyoffice.io is the website. You can just check that out there, and we will give you everything end to end for your digital asset LLC to make sure that you're prepared for price appreciation and ready for where life's taking you. But with that, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. I hope you all have a wonderful evening, and we will see you guys on the next one.